We're now going to go to Joe Brew and Sally Wainwright, who will be talking about lesbian persistence. Welcome, Joe and Sally.
We're here at a lesbian event. I'm sure most people watching know by now, but WDI published a book called Women's Rights, Gender Wrongs, The Global Impact of Gender Identity Ideology. It's got contributions from women in, I think, 38 different countries. It's split into two halves. One is a series of short essays about gender identity ideology and the writer's experiences of it. Some of it's quite very, very personal, and some of it's quite academic and everything in between. So it's a very wide-ranging kind of view of the impact that the ideology is having on women around the world. And then the second half is a set of standardized country reports, so you can compare the progress or lack of progress in different countries, and that's done against the declaration. So we ask questions about the articles of the declaration and where each country stands on that. It's been quite successful. Sales were starting to sort of slow down a bit, but then a couple of things happened, including Menno did an interview with me, which he'd done months earlier, but he finally got around to publishing it in November, I think. And that's really helped put sales up as well. And Kath Aiken, who's my co-editor, and I are going to be doing perspectives on it in June. So if people want to join that, they might want to kind of get a book and read it beforehand. Should be available from Amazon.
Yeah, and just to say, we've got a conference. WDI has a conference in July in London, and if you haven't yet got tickets, there are online tickets and in real life tickets. We'll keep on updating what's going to be going on, but quite a lot of people have bought the book to pick up at the conference, so that's really nice that it has lasting appeal.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, gender identity ideology still lasts. I'm kind of hoping for the day when nobody will want to read the book anymore, or at least there's no more than a kind of historical look at something dreadful that used to happen.
Yeah,
but sadly, that's not the case yet.
Could you say a little bit more about the conference this summer?
Oh, yes. So I'll do that now. So the conference that we're going to have in the summer is going to be continuing the theme of WDI, which is promoting the declaration, building international sisterhood. And we think that we're going to sort of reiterate or continue to promote the special job of Women's Declaration International, which is international networking around TERF issues. So I find it funny because I'm an old Marxist, an old lefty. The TERF International, like the Third International, but we're the TERF International. But we're going to be really, and we called it the global silencing of women, but we think we might change the name and call it something else, like international something. But we'll spread that around, and it should be fantastic. Cara, you're going to be coming. Sally hopefully will be there. I'll be there. Sheila Jeffers will be there, Lauren Levy, Amparo Domingo. We've got quite a large list of speakers. If you're listening now and can come and want to speak, then just email and we will continue to send information out. So I think it's going to be really good. We'll invite lots of other, related women. So it should be a really good international networking thing. It was great last year.
It was. Can I add, if you would sort of quite like to speak, but you've never done that before and you're a bit anxious about it, I think it's really, we can do a lot to support you, and it would be really great to have some different perspectives as well. If you've got an idea about stuff that we haven't already thought of, it would be really, really good to get some new speakers in. So please really don't be backward in coming forward, so to speak. We'd really love to hear from you.
Yeah, and we're going to have workshops as well. And so some activities, so it won't be all just speeches. And then yes, definitely sort of everybody is welcome to participate and to speak. Right, okay, well, let's move on to the next thing. So Sally, you're also involved, or maybe set up, Lesbian Persistence. Can you tell us about that organization and why and what, etc.?
Yeah, well, to go back a little bit, this time last year, more or less, it occurred to me that there was about to be this major case for Women in Scotland case against the Scottish government, which looked at the definition of a woman and whether that included men with a gender reclamation certificate. And I'd been concerned for quite a long time that there wasn't really a lesbian perspective ever in that. It got touched on a little bit, but there wasn't a really strong lesbian voice in that. And I felt that that would make a difference to the case. And in fact, I think it did. And so I suggested a lesbian intervention, and 3 organisations, 2 English ones and a Scottish one, came together and sort of formally put in an intervention, which was quite significant in the whole case. And we're hoping for a result before Easter, but it's getting closer and closer to Easter. So it may be after Easter, and I'll come back and talk about it, once we get the judgment out. But that made me think, and made several of us talking about it, realize the importance of having a proper, strong lesbian voice. And an organisation that lesbians could join in and participate, and have their views heard within the organisation as well. So we set up Lesbian Persistence. Unfortunately, we weren't named in the For Women in Scotland case because we didn't exist at the point that the lesbian intervention went in. But since then, we've set up this organisation. We launched in November last year. We've got kind of 2 aims. One is to raise the profile of lesbians socially, culturally, and politically. And the second one is to build lesbian community. And I mean, to me, they go very much hand in hand. Back in the day when I was sort of young lesbian, there was a lesbian community in the UK. I lived in a lesbian housing co-op. We had about 30 houses spread over 2 or 3 streets, actually very in the East End of London. And that lasted for a number of years, and it was really, really important. And we had lesbian discos, and we had lesbian bookshops, and we just had lesbian events. You could just live your life, an ordinary life, but you could live it predominantly with other lesbians, or as much with other lesbians as you wanted to do. And gradually, I think largely, or at least partly, because of the impact of the encroachment of gender identity ideology, and the fact that men have started turning up at lesbian events and saying, well, we can come too now because we're women and we're lesbians. That's the definition. If you're a heterosexual man and you're allowed to call yourself a woman, you're still attracted to women. So by definition, if you're a heterosexual man who's a woman, then you're a lesbian. I mean, it's completely absurd, which was the case we made at the High Court, but at the Supreme Court. But it was so important that lesbian community to me when I was growing up. I'm really, really aware now, for example, that there are very few young lesbians that are visible, and there's nowhere for them to go. And there's nowhere for us as older lesbians to meet, or there hasn't been until quite recently. There's starting to be a little bit now. And so we wanted to set up an organisation which would provide more of a sort of social network and try and build a lesbian community. But also we wanted to do some political activism around it. So would you like me to say a bit about what we've done?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, well, socially first, when we first launched, there was about 10 of us, I think, initially, and we had a little party at my house. It was Halloween, so we all wore witches' hats and had a good time and had a bit of a chat about what we were going to do. And then we went on to have various meetings in pubs, and gradually we were inviting women to join, and we've done it all. At the moment, we've grown organically through women that we know. And so we haven't had a screening problem, but I think we will at some point, try and attract a broader number of people. But at the time, we were having these sort of pub nights, and we had a pool evening at night at one point, just to invite new women to come along and join us. And then in January, some of you will know that there's a Scottish tradition called Byrne's Night, which celebrates the life of Robert Burns. And there's a sort of set formula for that, which is that you eat haggis, nips and tatties, and you pipe in. The haggis comes in with a bagpipe in front of it. And then somebody reads a Robbie Burns poem called Address to the Haggis, which is all about how wonderful the haggis is. And then you have a meal, and then somebody gives the immortal memory of Robert Burns, where they tell the story of his life. And then traditionally, a man stands up, gives a toast to the lassies, and a woman stands up and replies to the toast to the lassies. And all these talks are followed by, drinking a bit of whiskey, and they're generally taking the piss out of each other a bit and hopefully funny. Sometimes they're very, very serious, but sometimes they're quite entertaining. So we decided that we were going to do an event. It wasn't our original idea. We did it several years ago during lockdown. WDI online, we were going to have a Magdalene Burns night. Only the only thing that was different about it was that this was going to be a lesbian only one, and it was fantastic. So we had the haggis piped in, and we had the address to the haggis, and then somebody stand up and talked about the life of Magdalene Burns instead of Robert Burns, and then we'd been toying with, well, how are we going to do the equivalent of the toast to the lassies? And somebody said, well, we could do butch and femme, but that didn't really fly for very long. And then in the end, we did a toast. Actually, I gave it this time, a toast from the older lesbians to the younger lesbians, and sort of welcoming them into the community. So it was rather more inclusive than the traditional Burns stuff. And one of the younger women stood up and gave a response to that. And it was really fantastic, and everybody enjoyed it. And we think one of the things that's really important that we want to do as lesbian persistence is also, we don't have lesbian traditions. We have all sorts of traditions in the rest of our lives. Everybody has Christmas dinner together. I mean, whatever it is that you do, people do things, and you have rituals and things, and those rituals don't exist in lesbian life. So we think that it's really important to start some. So our Byrne supper, our Magdalene Byrne supper, that is kind of, we're saying it's the first of an annual event, and we intend it to be a lesbian tradition. And I've been talking to other lesbians here today about building lesbian community. And at least one woman said to me, well, I'm going to do that in the community where I live, which is somewhere in England. And maybe that's something that we can spread, the idea of Magdalene Byrne suppers. And then after that, we had a film night, a lesbian film night, which we just did at somebody's house. And we hope that will be a regular-ish event where we just get together and watch lesbian movies. And then we had a lesbian pancake night, because there's nothing tastier than a lesbian pancake, of course. And sometimes we just put things out, do sort of social things together, like going to the movies or going to the theatre and things. So it's really just about being a social group is really, really important, but building out from that. But we also want to do political work, and the stuff that we've been doing up until now is mostly we've been doing it through responding to various consultations. So the Equality and Human Rights Commission had a consultation on its new guidelines on the interpretation of the Act, or the Equality Act. So that was the first consultation we responded to. And it set the format for what we've done for all our consultation responses, which is to say, and what about the lesbians? And have you thought about this? And have you thought about the way that this affects lesbians? And this is what happens to lesbians when you do that. And what about the lesbians? So, but almost everything we look at, that's the thing, that the lesbian perspective is just completely and totally missing. Like, it's missing from all of the international treaties. CEDAW, which we know is really important in terms of setting out our sex-based rights as women. The convention itself, the treaty itself, doesn't mention lesbians anywhere. There are no rights for lesbians. So CEDAW was one of the CEDAW committee had a consultation out on a new general recommendation about gender stereotypes. So we put in a response to that, again, talking about the impact of gender stereotypes on lesbians. And we're able to, everybody was able to put in a sort of 3-minute video as well, if they wanted to, for an oral presentation. So we did one of them. And they're all on the UN's website, if anybody's interested in looking at them. And actually, there was a funny story, because there was only 3 lesbian organizations that, as far as I know, that responded to this particular consultation. So there was Lesbian Persistence, there was the Lesbian Bill of Rights International, and there was the WDI Lesbian Caucus. And when the stuff got posted up, ours wasn't there. And the Lesbian Bill of Rights one was there, but the link was broken to their written submission. But there was nothing at all about lesbian persistence. So I wrote and said, what's happened and where is it? And they magically managed to find our video and put that up and said, well, yes, your video's up here. And then we fixed the link for your written presentation. And they decide, and the Lesbian Bill of Rights International. And it's like, The only thing that connects us and the Lesbian Bill of Rights is that both our organizations start with the word lesbian. But somehow the UN CEDAW people had managed to assume that we were the same people. So we had to deal with them about that. And we did eventually get them to put the lesbian persistence one up as well. But I think it partly shows how unusual it is for them to get submissions from lesbian organizations. And we're really invisible, we're invisible nationally or invisible internationally as well. So we've also responded to Reem Al-Salem had a couple of consultations out about connected to violence against women, and a sort of connected one on the concept of consent. So we responded to both of them, and then as a result of having responded, we were invited to attend an online discussion with her with all the other groups. So we went to both of them as well, and then I think the last one that we did was something for the Equalities Committee at Holyrood, Scottish Government. Again, we put in a thing talking about the lesbian perspective, and that was really good because then a couple of weeks later there was a discussion where they were taking evidence from witnesses, and they were asking questions about lesbians, and that's never happened before. And it was very much, oh well, keep feeding us the information, and we'll keep picking it up. So I think it shows how important it is that we raise the subject of lesbians, because if we don't do it, then it's not going to occur to anybody else. And it's very fair dues. I mean, there's no particular reason why heterosexual women should think about lesbians, but we just need to keep feeding them things. And we've got a couple of other consultations in the pipeline as well. So I was talking about all that here today with some women, and it was really interesting. We're talking about building lesbian community, and it was really interesting how much interest there is. And one of the things that was a question that I'd been going to ask was who here feels that they're already a member of the lesbian community. But actually, when we did a quick introduction of who everybody was at the beginning, it turned out everybody there was involved, or at least everybody who'd come to my workshop was already involved pretty well in one organization or another. So I think this is a real change. We were also talking about something. I was saying, oh, you're going to come to some event, and somebody else was saying, oh, I can't because it clashes with something. And somebody else was saying, oh, yes, there's these other events that clash. And isn't it a drag? But actually, it's not a drag. Some of these are women's events, not lesbian events. But it's brilliant because, 3 years ago, if any of us could find a single event in the whole of the UK to go to in a year, we were doing really well. And now we can't get to them all because they're clashing. There's too many. Yeah, and I think that what's happening is that women did get kind of really, really put down, women, heterosexual women and lesbians, and we did get put down and we did get silenced, and we've said, that's enough, we're not doing this anymore. And gradually we're kind of emerging, and we're starting to set up organizations all over again, and events and activities and politics and things.
But at this event that we're at, we just did wool web weaving, which used to happen at Greenham Common, and we did it, and it was just great. It was really, really nice, and I'd be very happy to do it lots of times, like over and over again, even if it's exactly the same thing, because it's so lovely. And we also did this thing, the spiral dance, where you sing, and Positive Paula Bolton leads the singing, and it's just beautiful. It's so fantastic, and that's, I think, a tradition I've done quite a few times. And I remember going to that Radfem Swedish event years and years ago, and doing that spiral dance there. And I think remembering doing these things in various different places is amazing. So the more we can do, and that links up to what WDI, we're sort of thinking we're going to be trying to concentrate, or just at least be explicit about the importance of international networking, that we think, although there's a massive threat to women's rights globally from Trump and all over the place, Afghanistan, in lots of different ways, we actually are doing brilliantly. We, the women's movement and the TERF, International TERF Islands, all of us here at WTI and all our friends are actually, we've mobilized, and we're an incredibly well-organized women's movement. So we're going to sort of focus on massive achievement that we've done. Okay, well, that's it.